You have a waterproofing and disaster restoration business, and you want to expand and grow your brand. That's where we come in. This is the Coffee and Crawl Space Show. Our passion is to produce premium quality content related to the crawl space encapsulation, basement waterproofing, and foundation repair industry. Plus, we love coffee, and you love coffee. So grab a cup and let's talk crawl spaces and more. Now, here's your host, Crawl Space Kiefer.
Hey guys, Crawl Space Kiefer here, and I have my coffee and I am ready to talk crawl spaces. And today we have Josh Maynor, who is the owner of Crawl Logic, which is a crawl space repair, basement waterproofing, and foundation repair business located in Fairview, Tennessee. Thanks for joining us, Josh.
Hey, Kiefer. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to jump right into it. So tell us a little bit about your background before you got into the crawl space industry.
So when I was 21, I got into sales. I started out as a car salesman. Wasn't very good at it. I was very mediocre. Did that for about 3 years. Kind of bounced around with different sales jobs. Then I finally landed my first good sales job and got into crawl spaces about 5 years in and just took it and ran with it.
Oh, cool. So what got you actually into the industry?
So I was about 2 months from being a new father. I had no money, and I had a friend that worked at a major pest control company, and he called me up and he was like, "Hey, I think they're hiring sales guys here. If you want to interview my friend, I'm friends with the manager." So he set me up an interview. I showed up in the interview with clothes too large. I had to borrow some clothes. I had like $26 to my name, and he was like, "Yeah, we're hiring a sales guy. You have a good personality. Let's give this a shot." And on my first day, I did a ride along with another sales guy. Watched him sell an encapsulation, and he was like, "I just made $1,200." And after that, I was hooked.
So how long did it take you to get fully trained and then start selling crawl space jobs?
I sold my first crawl space about a month in, and I ended up getting Rookie of the Year at this company. So I basically took it. I focused strictly on crawl spaces. I didn't sell termite work. I didn't sell pest control. I would just go to the sales call, go straight into the house, and talk about crawl spaces. And I had a little presentation book that I would use, and I would basically go through a page by page of each section of crawl space science, then each page of installing it. And I just had basically a script that I would use every time, and I just got more and more comfortable over time.
You still kind of like modified that type of script for your own brand at this point?
I don't use a book.
Yeah, you don't use a book now. Yeah.
I don't use a book. I've got my own sales process that I use. I have a lot of the same word tracks that I use, but really the difference between now and then is the confidence that I use when I do talk about crawl spaces. It's I don't have to stutter. I don't get tongue tied. It's complete 100% confidence with every sales call.
So why did you end up starting Crawl Logic, and why didn't you stay with that previous company?
So I had a very cush job. I was making great money. I mean, I was making six figures. I was one of the top sales guys in the country for this big company. So I had it made. I could have retired from there, but the quality of the work that was being put out was very poor. And like even the jobs not even being all the way finished, and it really just made me upset and made me feel like I wasn't doing right by my customer. And ethics is basically number one with Crawl Logic. So I basically cashed out my 401k, bought a truck, bought two Hilti guns, and started Crawl Logic. I quit my job after my first encapsulation, and took it and ran with it.
Wow. So the pest control industry, there are good pest control companies out there doing encapsulations, but it does seem like there are an awful lot that just are not doing it right. That's been my experience. So it's interesting that, you actually working for them have kind of seen the same thing. Why do you think that is, that so many pest control companies seem to be getting a bad rap. Not all,
Uh,
not all. I want to make sure that I'm very clear with that, right? I know some that are just absolutely stellar, and
mhm.
I'll have them on the show as well. But as a whole, there really seems to the quality doesn't seem to matter as much as the guys in waterproofing that are doing crawl space encapsulation.
At least from my experience, I worked for a multi-billion-dollar nationwide company, and in my opinion, the guys weren't paid enough, so they weren't paid enough to care. You're basically what I tell my own customers is you're dealing with commission-based salesmen. They're taught scripts and what to say, but they've never gotten under a house and worked and on a job, so they don't really know what they're doing. I mean, I'm talking about myself. I did this for years, but you're basically going out there just trying to sell something, and then the guys doing it don't really care about how it looks. Whereas now, I'm very OCD about my crawl spaces and how they look. If they look like garbage, I'm very upset. But I'm also doing my own installs with my crew. Every job that I've sold, I've done with my own bare hands.
Yeah, yep, very cool, very cool. So, what services did you offer when you first started CrawlLogic? Was it
Uh,
everything, or just one or two services?
Basically, in caps, I've been in business 2.5 years, and I did in caps only for about 2 years. I've just recently started getting into structural work like jacks, sistering joist, termite repair, wood repair, and I'm actually doing my first basement next month. So I'm trying to expand. I want to get into mold remediation, but I've strictly been an NCAP guy for the last two and a half years.
Yeah. So when did you start doing your first other services like crawl space repairs?
2 months ago. We did two jacks and we sistered six joists, and I loved the customer's response. They had a major sag in their kitchen, and we were able to get it completely level, and they were absolutely ecstatic. We ended up coming back a month later and installing joist hangers and jacking up their floor joist in their one of their computer rooms, and made it to where their china cabinet was no longer shaking. So I actually really enjoy the structural work. It's a thinking man's job, and I almost like it more than crawl space encapsulations.
Were you scared to offer that service at first? I personally, when I had my company, did not offer that, and we subbed that out to some other contractors that we worked with all the time. But I never had the balls, basically, to turn around and actually get into the structural repair.
So the one advantage that I had is my foreman. He's a carpenter and a framer by trade. So he's the one that he knew what he was doing. So basically, I was following his lead on how to sister a joist, how to bottle jack it up, how to install the joist hangers, how to attach them together, how to do the floor jacks. Like he already knew how to do all this. So I was basically learning from him.
Yeah, so like when we turned around and got my old company, we got into basement waterproofing. I was terrified of that as well, and I luckily had a guy come into the office that was wanted to work for us that had extensive background doing basement
Mhm.
waterproofing, and we turned around and brought him aboard and let him do that, and it was amazing
Yeah.
how simple it really was when you get past the idea that you're jacking up somebody's floor and everything. So find if you don't know how to do it, like all like new people in this industry, right? Or maybe a companies that are just offering limited services but don't want to get into repair side of things. It is all you really have to do is find the right person, get them to join your team, and then hand it over, right? And
Mhm.
then you can be successful. Just you got to make sure you get the right person. You yourself don't have to have that knowledge, right? You just have to have people on your team that do, right? And it can open up a huge amount of revenue for you.
It's a little intimidating. I've got a friend in our crawl space group, John Dykes. He's offered to let me come and basically learn from him for the day. He's a guy that I go to for a lot of advice. Good friend of mine and a guy I look up to. But I do need to make the trip to come shadow him for a day or two. I'd like to do that before my basement job next month because I'd like to put hands on a basement before I go put hands on my own customer's basement. And I'd
Yeah,
rather learn from someone that's done it.
yeah, and you just brought up your crawl space group. That's how I ended up getting in contact with you, and then you had me join, and so on and so forth. I think originally you let Corey Parks in. Corey Parks reached out to me, told me about your group, and that's how we got connected. You want to talk about your group at all that you started? How did
So
that come about? What's its name? How can people join?
So I had a friend of mine invite me to a construction group. He's a remodeler. He's a really good friend of mine, and I posted a picture of my work, and Lee Sell was in there, and Lee Sell told me, he's like, I do crawl spaces, and we started messaging back and forth. We became friends, and I was like, hey, let's start a crawl space group. Let's start adding business owners, kind of like this construction group, and we can learn from each other. We can help each other. I don't know everything. You don't know everything, and maybe we can add some vendors, maybe we can add this, we can add that, and it really just became it's called crawl space think tank, but it became a think tank where we can swap ideas and help each other get better.
Yep. Good group. I love being a part of it myself. I kind of feel a little bit bad that I started my own group too. All right. So hopefully no hard feelings there, Josh.
Oh, I'm very upset.
uh, so, what do you think your strongest skill is as a business owner? Right, you're now an entrepreneur. You've had to wear many hats. What do you think you really makes you where you're strongest?
Definitely my sales. I started out coming from a very good high performing sales background. I worked for a major pest control company. I also worked for a major waterproofing company, and basically learned from both of those, and was a top performer at both of them. So coming over to Crawl Logic, I've never had a problem with sales. Getting jobs on the books has been basically the easiest part, and I know that's a part where people can struggle, but I sales is by far my strongest point.
So you are my client as well, right? So I want to make sure everybody knows that. We'll talk a little bit about that stuff later on. But you have a really high close rate, right? So what is your close rate so other people know? And I'm a witness to this, you closing all these. Like what is your close rate, and what makes you able to close so many of these in your opinion?
Uh, when I track the numbers, I average around 75%. Last month, I actually sold 11 sales calls in a row, or it was 12 sales calls in a row. Basically, I go out there as a teacher. I'm not going out there as a salesman. I stick to my word tracks. I answer the questions with confidence. I've got the Google reviews to back up my reputation. I've got the Better Business Bureau accreditation. My work's very high end, and I'm also using thicker materials than everybody in my area. I'm putting lights under the house, so I'm basically giving this quality, and I'm coming in basically slightly lower than the major companies. I'm about in the middle on pricing.
Yeah, so that's good. You're very competitive on the pricing, and you're giving better service. So
Yep.
you're the vapor barrier, the crawl space encapsulation system that you're installing. Can you tell us a little bit about yours and why it's better than some of the other people in your area?
So the most commonly used vapor barrier in my area is a 12 or a 20 mil. I start with a 26 mil drainage matting that goes on the ground. I cover the entire floor with it. I actually stake it to the ground so it doesn't curl up. And then I go over the top with a 90 mil poly. I use the 90 mil on the walls. I wrap the piers with it. I cover the ground with it. And I also put at least 10 lights under every house. So when you go to take those after photos, you've got a fully illuminated crawl space. It takes gorgeous pictures. Sometimes I'll do 20. I've done up to 40 lights under a house, but my quality speaks for itself in comparison to like my competitors. I've seen some of the major companies work in Nashville, and they cost more than me, and I see the work they're putting out.
Now I used to install a lot of 90 mil with my previous company as well, and even up to 180 mil. What are some of
Oh
the other
wow!
what are the some of the other benefits of the 90 mil, the actual vapor barrier itself? Right?
I
And I'll guide you a little bit on this one, right? It's the white side everybody sees, but what's on the back side, and what are the properties of that? Why does that benefit people?
So it's a radiant barrier and an insulated poly. I like it because it's easier to install. It's very light. It looks very good, and it lays extremely flat versus using a 20 or a 12 mil. Mainly, I like it because of the looks, and it's very hard to puncture unless you like stab it with a knife or a sharp rock. And the rocks are, I pull all the rocks out when I do my install, but then I also lay the drain mat underneath it, so there's an extremely low chance of getting punctures in my encapsulations.
Yeah, yeah.
Like we did a job last week. We pulled rocks for 2.5 hours before we even started.
Yeah, drain mat was something I never installed with our 90 mil. So I would say that yours is even thicker on the ground when you add
Mm-hmm.
that. That's a huge level of protection. But yeah, that radiant barrier that's on there, right? You have it helps regulate the temperature and gives even more energy savings as well, right? So that's a huge part of the encapsulation in the material that you're using. So I really wanted, if anybody happens to watch this up in your area, really want them to understand the radiant barrier for your sake as well. Hopefully it help you close even more jobs. Maybe get a 95% close rate.
Well, my supplier told me that I was the first customer in Nashville to use 90 mil, and I started using it, and I started posting these pictures online. Now I feel like everybody uses it in Nashville. I mean, it's sold out sometimes, but I think it's a lot of the smaller guys like me that are using it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what would you say is your weakest skill? Where,
Uh,
where would you think, if I had to hire somebody, this is the type of person I need to hire next for the next big business growth?
I think my toughest part is relinquishing control. I do like doing my own installs. If I don't have a sales call that day or I finish early, I always go to the job site and I work till 6 o'clock. We work Saturdays, we work Sundays. I get under there and work just as hard as my crew, but getting out of the crawl space completely has been very hard. I think in the last 3 months, I've probably let them do like 2 or 3 jobs without me.
Oh wow. Yeah, so working on the business and not in it, that's definitely,
Yes.
a problem for a lot of us.
Yep.
So one of the other things I wanted to talk about was what are some of the growth problems and how did you overcome them?
Um, I think my what gave me the most trouble last year was finding a solid crew. I started out. I had a really good friend of mine. He'd been doing crawl spaces in Charleston, South Carolina, for about 10 years. I knew him from Brazilian Jiu Jitsu at my gym, and he came and worked for me. And he's one of my best friends, but he wanted to focus more on Jiu Jitsu, so I was without a crew, so I was doing some of these by myself or getting a friend to help me every now and then. And I ended up linking up with my foreman, and his brother works for me last summer. Once I got them two on board, we've just been growing astronomically. Now we have myself and 4 people, and the quality, whether I'm there or not, is there every single time.
Yeah. How many jobs are you doing a week now? I mean, you're going through these quick. Your team is definitely fast.
We do about 3 to 4 a week. I'll give a little piece of advice. I think my secret weapon is that 2 of my crew are girls, and their taping and their attention to detail is astronomically better than mine or my other 2 guys. Once I brought them on, I noticed that the taping just looks gorgeous. The way that even taping around the door, the piers. I'm really happy with the girls that I've got, and my foreman and his brother also do an excellent job. So I've got a very good, well trained crew at the moment.
Yep, yep. And if you saw one of my first episode where I had my wife on, she used to encapsulate with us as well, and she
Mm-hmm.
could wrap piers extremely fast, and she was good
Mm-hmm.
at everything she did. And we jokingly always talk about when she was doing the air sealing. That was one of the things she was had to do on every job. She always thought it was like putting icing on a cake. That's how she
Yep.
looked at it, right? So and everything looked beautiful. We also had at my old company, we had a couple girls that we had brought on, and they were all good. And there was one that particularly that was just absolutely phenomenal, and she moved away, and that was a very sad day for us because she was a major kick butt crew leader.
Yep.
So, what are some of the things that you feel that have drastically helped you succeed with Crawl Logic?
Um, One, you and me working together. That was kind of the turning point. Two, perfecting my sales process, and three, my crew. And I would say I treat this business like my third child. I eat, drink, and sleep crawl spaces, and I enjoy what I do. Like, I have a lot of passion for it. My customers tell me it's not just a job for me. I like going to work every day. I'm excited when I have sales calls. I'm excited when I go work under a house. Like, it's what I'm meant to do.
Awesome.
And if you have passion for what you do, then you're not really working.
Yep. So what are the major types of marketing that you're doing right now that are leading to your success?
So me and you started doing Google Organic last January, and once we kind of got everything built up and took the time to get everything started, it's basically just had an upward trend ever since, and it's actually not even leveled out. Like, every month the sales are still going up. Like, I haven't really maxed it out yet. I'm sure it'll take me a few more months to max it out, but right now I'm seeing like maybe 120 to $150,000 a month in closed sales.
Yeah. So no, that's absolutely phenomenal. And you know, as your marketing guy, you won't cap out in a few months. You got a long ways to go still. There's still so much marketing to go after, so many keywords and different avenues and so on and so forth. So, you know,
At least in terms of sales, I
yeah,
feel like I've maxed out my sales potential.
well, you're gonna have to hire some more salespeople and bring them on, right?
Yep.
Uh, how much have you grown within the last year? Like,
I'll use some numbers. Last year we did 440,000, and me and you really things started picking up around June. That's when they got crazy. That's when I got my crew. That's when my phone rang every single day. And right now, I think we're at 370 in on March 9th. So we're gonna hit triple last year's numbers already. And to put it in perspective, my first year I did 140,000.
yep, that's phenomenal. Uh, did you think it was possible to grow so fast when you started CrawlLogic? Where did you think that you would be at the end of your first year?
My first year it was really hard to find leads. I was doing maybe two or three jobs a month. I had a very unique way of getting leads. Basically, I had other sales guys that I was friends with, and they would bird dog leads to me they couldn't close, and I would pay them a kickback. This is a little. Some people might not agree with this, but I get a lot of competitor ads on my Facebook, and I would go on there and message comments, and I would get a lot of leads that way. And I got a lot of referrals, but I didn't have a website. I didn't have marketing. I didn't even have T-shirts for probably 2 years. I'd go out there in just a polo shirt or a T-shirt and blue jeans, and I don't even have business cards. Like, there's a lot of things that I was doing very unorthodox, and obviously the numbers spoke for it. I was very, very average.
Do you get any compliments on the website we built you?
Every day, people love my website, and a lot of them say they'll go with me because I have a very nice professional website that has my work showcased, and they're like, "Oh, this guy knows what he's doing." One
Yep,
sec, I got my foreman texting me.
no problem.
Sorry.
That's all right. I think all of us in the business know how it is. So you got
Yep.
this beautiful logo on your shirt, right? Uh, so was that your original logo?
So I've been in business 2.5 years. I've had three logos. I made my first logo on Microsoft Paint, and it was black and red, and you could barely read the name Crawl Logic. Actually, to get a little more precise, I actually started with a different name. I was going to franchise a friend of mine's remodeling business. So I was going to do painting, decks, windows, roofing, whatever. And I had no experience in that ball game. But I started out selling just crawl spaces. And then my wife was like, "Why don't you get away from remodeling and go to crawl spaces?" So she came up with the name Crawl Logic. And my wife's a marketing; she has a marketing degree, and so she's very very good at marketing. And I made my first logo. A friend of mine made my second logo. It looked a little bit better, and then you made this logo. Sorry, you made this logo a couple months ago, and I absolutely love it.
Right. Very, very friendly. Do you get any comments from your customers or anything about your logo?
I do. They're like, "Is that you?" And it looks very good. It looks very professional, and it gives them a kind of a reason to smile.
Yep. Good, good, good. Um, so, what do you love most about the industry?
Um, I love to sell. I love selling crawl spaces. I like seeing the before and after transformation. You give me the dirtiest, wettest, disgusting crawl space. I'll take some before pictures, and when I'm done, it'll look like you could eat lunch under the house. And it's one thing that my customers enjoy too is seeing a drastic transformation done under their house.
Yeah, it is absolutely amazing in a service, that so little people know about.
Mhm.
The industry's got such a long way to mature, but those transformations, oh my God,
And
there's
it and
something
it's
else.
and it's decent money.
Yes,
It's a good paycheck.
yes, it is. So I'm always curious, what are the areas of the industry that you think can be most improved on?
If I were to look at like other companies, quality is at the very very tip top of my absolute. I'll never put out a bad crawl space, and I feel like a lot of companies focus more on volume versus quality. They just crank them out as fast as they absolutely can, and if it looks bad, it looks bad. If the customer calls complaining, they just ignore them. An example is I had a friend of mine. He bought this house. He told his wife, "Call Josh. He'll do the crawl space." And I guess she just didn't call me. She called a big pest control company, and they just botched the heck out of the job. And I was out there yesterday, and I was like, "Yeah, this is just absolutely terrible. The vents weren't even sealed. The DE was just running all the time. There was just dirt all over the plastic, and they spent 12 grand on it, and they actually spent more than I would have charged them, and they were very upset. And I think they've been dealing with this company trying to get them to come back out, and they're just on straight ignore.
Yep, yep. I've been involved in those many, many a times. Well, oh, so tell us a funny story about the craziest crawl space job you've ever run into, or even inspection.
So about back in November, I went out and I bid a job. It was a flooded crawl space. I'd never done a fully flooded crawl space, and I was bidding the job. In the back of my mind, I was like, I hope I don't get this sale. I couldn't get started for a month and a half, so they got a local company, or actually a fairly large company, to do it. They said the large company would just show up for an hour and leave, wouldn't do the work, so they fired them. They called me, and I was like, oh, I got to go do this job, and because it was a job I was kind of intimidated by. We get out there on day one, and the entire crawl space is an ocean. It's from there's about 5 inches of water in there, and it's in the entire crawl space. I get there, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. I made a post on the crawl space think tank, asked around, asked the guys what I should do, and 6 days later, I had this job budgeted for three. 6 days later, we had the crawl space bone dry. We had it fully done. And this customer was absolutely ecstatic because it was a real estate transaction. So it had to be done so they could sell this house. And they've sent me 4 referrals in the last 2 months.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
So I didn't
Well,
give up and run away from the job. I dug in and got it done, and it's paid off since then.
that's fantastic. So thanks for sharing that. I super appreciate it. So thanks for also stopping by the show. This is kind of the end that I got. And Josh, I will have you back on for other different topics that I really want to dive into. And I think I'll bring some other guests so we have multiple people tackling some of the problems everybody's face, whether it be hiring or starting a new service and sales and all that stuff. Definitely have you on about more sales, and maybe I can get some people to call in the future as well, ask you questions
Of course.
directly. Well, thank you so much for your time and have an awesome day.
Thank you.
Take care.
Today's video was brought to you by Gorilla Geeks. If you're looking for a digital marketing agency that specializes in generating high-quality leads for crawlspace encapsulation, basement waterproofing, and foundation repair, look no further than Gorilla Geek. Gorilla Geek's founder, Crawlspace Kiefer, grew his crawlspace and disaster restoration company to service 3 states and turned it into a franchise, and selling it in 4.5 years. Now, he has a passion to help other waterproofing and disaster restoration businesses grow their brands. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten some useful and practical information. If you want to get more leads and grow your brand, visit GorillaGeeks.com for more info. See you next time on the Coffee and Crawlspace Show.